Welcome back to Broadcast Beats, streaming of the 2017 SMPTE Conference and Exhibition. We've got some other excellent guests sitting directly to my right here from Sony Sound. We're going to be speaking with, directly to my right, Tom McCarthy, who's the Executive Vice President of Post-Production Facilities at Sony Picture Studios and President of the Motion Picture Sound Editors.
Yes.
Right? And then next to him, Bill Baggelaar, who's Senior Vice President of Technology, Production, and Post-Production for Sony Pictures. So welcome, gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
So I understand there's some new technologies over at Sony on their sound stages.
Yes.
We would like to tell me about what technologies we're going to find there.
Yes, actually for our facility, we find that it's really important for us to be very diversified. We want to have as much different technologies and services for our filmmakers to help them in one centralized location. So with the help of Bill here, we've put in 2 immersive sound mixing stages with Dolby Atmos and Aural. And we also built a home theater room, which is for home theater mixing, capable of 5.1, 7.1, and both immersive formats. We've added an IMAX stage, 12-channel versioning suite, which allows us to do the versions after the OV. And we've added speakers to the back of the Holden and Novak theaters to have a direct 12-channel IMAX format. But Bill can talk more about.
Has this all been over what kind of a period of time? It sounds like you guys are.
Been over the past several years. I mean, we've grown from the first immersive stage that we built to a second, and then built the home Atmos immersive sound room in order to basically leverage what's being done in theatrical in order to be able to get downstream into the home and for television, and then the IMAX piece as well. So it's been, you know, a strategy to expand the services as the clients have seen the need.
It sounds like a lot of expansion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I'm particularly interested in immersive. Tell me a little
As
bit.
everybody is.
As everybody is, exactly right. Tell me a little bit about the technology that you've relied on to create these stages.
Well, we've in some of the stages we've put in the S6 consoles to support the Atmos mixing in both the Holden and Novak stages, as well as the home theater room, and you know that does Dolby Atmos, does Oro, so we have height speakers for the Oro piece, and then the same thing on the IMAX stage. That one has a different speaker configuration, obviously for IMAX specifically, but has a similar setup. So we're trying to really leverage some of the not just tack on speakers into the environment, but actually create a new environment that allows the virtual mixing that is really allowing us to be flexible in the environment and be flexible for the mixers.
So it sounds like a kind of a close partnership then with Dolby, with IMAX, in order to create spaces that work for these companies' technology.
And Barco on the Oro side.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we were approached by IMAX about building the 12-channel versioning room because most people are going up to Canada to do that type service. It's been up there for a long time. And we wanted to have a local facility close to IMAX, close to other studios where we have competitive pricing and can provide the service. But in our facility, it is still all about diversification, and we just recently finished building a QC color correction stage so people can view color correction, because a lot of directors like to go all over town to different color correction facilities. This allows them, while they're on the mix stage, to go over to this particular room and see it streamed right there in a 4K Barco projector.
Yes, well, I've been at the Sony lot many, many times, and you're not kidding. It's like, you know, you walk 2 steps one way, you really have everything you need in a very close proximity.
Actually, one thing we really did was kind of cool. It's a 4-wall. It's a company called the Bakery.
Right.
Right, so right across from the immersive home theater room, which is all digital, we have a gentleman that his company is called The Bakery. It's music mastering for talent, Eric Clapton, Green Day, to name a few, Colby Collette, and he has a vinyl lathe. So he's creating masters for vinyl albums after he's doing the mastering.
Isn't it fabulous? We're back to vinyl, right?
There we go.
Very popular.
So what were the technologies? I'm presuming you don't build things just out of thin air. You build them because you get requests and demands. I mean, talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I think one of the most important technologies we've installed over the past 4 years was the Avid S6. I came from the creative side, half my career was creative side. I was familiar with the Pro Tools, and when you look at Avid, Avid's providing the picture editorial gear for picture editing, the Pro Tools for sound editing, and now they have a mixing board that completes the complete digital chain. And our artists really appreciate the fact that it's a smooth transition across the board, allowing them to do virtual mixing as opposed to standard traditional pre-dubs. And in a lot of cases now you're seeing, because of technology, where talent is going back and forth. Your sound supervisor, designer becomes a mixer, your mixer can be a sound supervisor. So that was one instrumental technology we put in.
Yeah, I think you know, when we're looking at the technologies to put in, it's certainly going to be you know, filmmaker desire or talent desire, but also looking at the broader strategy for the studio to say, how is the studio going to leverage it? How are we going to leverage this technology with our outside clients? Because we have a very good internal amount of work and external work as well. So we have to balance that and ensuring that we can be flexible, reactive, and at the same time try to be proactive as much as we can to sort of see where the technologies are going that are going to allow more people to want to be at Sony Pictures to do their work. And you know, that's really, I think, the key is balancing all of that.
And that's really important because 40% of our work is third party, and companies that are preparing that work for the mix do it different ways. There's different workflows. There's no set standard way to create the editorial process or the design process or the mix process. So we need to be flexible in a way that whatever workflow a filmmaker enjoys or is invested in, we're capable of having the talent and the stages to accommodate that. And technology keeps evolving. So it's not like you say, oh, well, this is the best technology, and just clean out your facility and put it in, because 3 years from now there'll be an S9.
There'll be another best technology.
But we do look from the talent. Everybody in our facility, the talent, the engineers are all stakeholders in our facility.
So in other words, you can get a lot of requests. You hear that your employees, your sound professionals,
Absolutely.
saying, you know, this is a really fabulous product or a really fabulous technology.
Yeah, this is what would help us with the process.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the engineers, and then I vet it out at the end.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, go on.
I was going to say that part of that is there are a lot of really good technologies out there, and that's the difficulty. You know, is there's a lot to choose from, but at some point you have to look at that sort of broad base and say, okay, how are we going to be able to leverage that technology? And sometimes the strategy gets you get a little distracted, where it's like one room is this thing, another room is this thing, and another room is something completely different. And it makes it very difficult to leverage across the whole facility that way. Mm-hmm. And so having common technologies allows us to leverage across much better as well. And the talent piece as well.
And Bill, because Bill's not just working with the post-sound facility, he's working with the whole studio. Uh-huh. So he's kind of the glue that makes sure that the technologies that we're putting into our area integrate well into the other areas of the facility technically, right? Mm-hmm. So it's an important process and a lot of support from Bill. And what also makes us unique, I wanted to bring up, is that we're not just a content creator, we're a technology company.
Yes.
So through Bill, Sony Japan Electronics comes out multiple times a year, and they bring their products that are coming down the pipeline, sound bars, headphones, and so forth, and we bring our talent and engineers into the room with their engineers, and we talk about how it sounds and what we might like to see a little more of, and back and forth, and they come back and forth throughout the year, and we help develop those products as well.
That's a huge partnership in the development of these sound products. You know, to have access to the talent and the engineering expertise, you know, on the sound side for a lot of this sound product, as well as the picture side. We do a lot on the picture side as well.
Well, it seems obvious to bring those two sides together, and yet it wouldn't be obvious for all companies, would it?
Right.
No, but you know, it's great because they'll build a sound bar. We'll take them into our home immersive room.
Right.
They can hear it in the professional environment, and then we can flip over and listen to a sound bar to see how it sounds in the consumer marketplace, and really make sure that we're getting the best value out of that product. So it is a great collaboration.
Oh, it sounds really good. One of the things you mentioned earlier that really struck me is you said sometimes you'll get specific requests from filmmakers themselves, about what they're looking for in terms of sound. Sound is usually the redheaded stepchild. So I'm heartened to hear that there are filmmakers who really focus on the sound and make. What kinds of requests do you get from filmmakers?
Go ahead.
I mean, for us, it's more of how technology has provided so much integration between different types of services like picture editing, sound editing, and mixing, coming all from the same platform from Avid, that during the course of shows, like a Columbia show, prior to mixing, maybe it's 16 weeks. Some directors like to work in a very creative, small environment during that process.
Got it.
They want to do temp mixes in a small environment. They aren't going to spend the money to go on big stages. And it becomes that sound designer who's doing those creation of the temp mixes. It's the person who's designing the tracks, building the sound effects tracks, so forth. Well, after a 16-week relationship, some directors will request that we then move the sound effects designer into the sound effects mixing chair. Not all the time, sometimes. And because of that, that was another push for the S6, because the S6 technology, previously Icon, was in the design suites. It got moved into the mix stages, so we had the ability to do that.
Right.
Then the more traditional mixers are falling onto the S6 because it allows them not to just pre-mix, it allows them to virtually mix sounds on each channel and have a pre-mix, but it's basically a session.
Right.
I think that's really the big piece where technology has really helped here, which is sound mixing is a very complex process with a number of people involved at any one time. And that collaborative aspect is something that technology helps to drive better collaboration. And so I think that's where, like Tommy was saying, that the filmmakers aren't necessarily saying, I want this particular piece of equipment, in this particular location, but they want the flexibility to have the collaborative atmosphere that they want. And then they can create immersive, sound in the different formats that we need for distribution. And as going back to your redheaded stepchild, comment, I mean, the resurgence in sound is actually, I think, very gratifying and very. It's great to see that there now is sort of an interest again in sound because of these new formats. I think people maybe got complacent with sound because 5171 mixes were fairly commonplace and became, I don't want to say easy, but became sort of the thing that, well, oh yeah, we're just going to do sound. But this is really opening up that next level of immersion to go along with better picture and all the other things that we're doing on the.
And yet sound has always been more powerful than people have given it credit for.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at the adoption of HD. They proved over and over again that audio was a very important factor in its adoption.
Well, and that's I think definitely one of the things that is easy to overlook, because while we are very sound oriented, we're visual beings. I mean, visual becomes a priority, and so we tend to negate sound, and the immersive sound formats really do create have such an environmental impact that I think that it's so subtle that a lot of people don't even understand how much more immersion they're getting. But I think the audiences in general, though, are getting like, oh, this is really cool.
Well, it sounds like you really go all out to make sure that you accept a variety of different workflows. You talked about how you have to adopt to all these different workflows. Does that also include budgets?
Oh, absolutely. But some of these workflows aren't necessarily budget driven. Mm-hmm. We have a gentleman, Paul Otteson, amazing sound supervisor, designer, re-recording mixer. Does a lot of big films. He is the sound supervisor, sound designer, and the sole re-recording mixer.
Wow.
That is the workflow that client wants.
Right.
When it comes to a budget, if it is challenged, well, then that is a time where you can recommend that let's have your sound designer or supervisor be that temp mixer, be the re-recording mixer, whatever it takes, because it's all about getting as much quality on the screen for the money they have. And despite a budget, filmmakers expect, their expectations are really high, right? But I did want to go back as your question about what technologies and why we do that. We look at what trends are. So people want immersive mixing. So we had to have those stages capable of doing that. IMAX mixing, it's right there on the lot. They don't need to send it and wait. They can participate in it. They can be viewing their color correction. They can do their home theater mix. They're scoring on the scoring stage. We're tied into the bakery. They can go ahead and start mastering. Whatever we need to do, we're capable of doing at this one location, which is why we call it a creative campus for all filmmakers.
Well, and that's why the diversification that you started off talking about, this seems like very key to your identity.
Yeah.
So, do you keep track? I'm curious. Do you keep track of different filmmakers' preferences, or does it?
We know.
You know. Okay. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You know, oh, this person likes this.
And we've broken molds. Like it used to be that there were mixing teams, and now that we have mixers, and they're separate because a director might want one, not another, or so forth. But we like to look at our facility as not TV or feature, not mixer or editor. We have talent and we have stages. And a good way to represent that is we're currently doing Lost in Space for Netflix. We're doing it on what used to be considered a theatrical stage. It's mixing there, it's using the new Pro Tools software that allows you to mix immersively, but yet you're monitoring in 5.1. We take that mix, send it down to the immersive home theater room, which is meant for home entertainment. We play it back to QC in the immersive environment.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So immersive also, I'm thinking about new technologies coming, or new means of delivery like virtual reality and augmented reality, and that's immersive as well.
Absolutely.
Well, that's where sound's actually ahead of picture for the first time.
Absolutely.
It's like you got immersive sound. It's so in tune for the requirements of VR.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you cue people where to look, right?
Yeah.
In this 360-degree environment.
It's
so have you worked on any of those projects yet, or is that still a little too early?
Bill has.
We've had experimental projects. We're certainly involved in the development of VR and how we're going to produce that type of content in the future. And we're looking at different ways of producing that. We have an ongoing study trying to figure out what technologies will work best in that environment. But certainly the VR landscape is still being fleshed out, so I think we have a little ways to go. But certainly, in order to make some product that people will be able to see, we can absolutely support that too.
Excellent. So what are some interesting projects you've worked on recently?
Wow. Recently, this last year, we had Spider-Man, we had Dark Tower, we had Blade Runner on our mix stages. We got to bring back a gentleman who just joined our team, Julian Slater, did Baby Driver, which we're really proud of. It's a very unique track. He mixed it in Europe, but now he's over here permanently on our studio, and we did the home theater mixes for that, which was kind of fun to see. But everything's different. It's like we have projects that we do the whole thing, editorial mix. We have projects that we just editorial, projects we just mix, projects that are just on the scoring stage or ADR stage. Our ADR stage currently is working on Peter Rabbit, and our scoring stage has done Jumanji recently, or it's still finishing Jumanji, and coming up Star Wars.
So you're busy all the time, in other words?
I would say it was funny because when I first took over the whole facility, we thought we had too big of a facility. And we were trying to figure out options. And then we became the only West Side facility because another competitor had closed up. And we filled up these stages. And besides that, looking at other avenues of ways we can support filmmakers or new technologies that we could bring in for distribution, we've expanded our facility.
Right.
So, but I would say we're pretty, over a course of a year, despite we have 12 mix stages, 3 Foley, 3 ADR, a scoring stage, and hundreds of editing rooms, we're probably 85% booked.
And you said that a hefty percentage of that is outside projects outside
40%.
Sony Pictures. 40%.
Yes.
So what are the interesting projects you've been working
Well,
on
last
there?
year we had Hacksaw Ridge. We were pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
That came back over from Australia, and we mixed it. Blade Runner is kind of a little bit Sony, but also Warner Brothers and Alcon. We do Detroit for Catherine Bigelow. Paul Addison. Catherine's very loyal to our facility, so she just recently finished that film this year. And yeah, I'd say that any of the areas is about a 40% mix.
That's great. So what, when you meet with clients for the first time, do you go through a consulting process where you talk about what their needs are technologically? How does that work? I come to you as a filmmaker. What do you
Well, that filmmaker is going to really want to go to their talent, right?
Yeah.
They prior to the start, we know who they want for a sound supervisor. That supervisor knows who he wants for a team. The mixers are chosen, and then it becomes a collaborative effort between the filmmaker and the creative talent. As for Bill and me, we're more the support staff now that ensures that they have what they need, and to make sure that if there's new things that are coming down the pipe that they would like, that we take their ideas seriously and integrate them into the facility, because you want those filmmakers to know that it's their facility too. If they're third party, it doesn't matter.
Right.
They book a stage, that's their stage, right? No one gets kicked or bumped or anything. And we want to know that when they leave, they feel and truly feel that this is their facility, and we're going to try to do everything we can for future things that they would like to see.
They're not a second-class citizen.
No, there's no second-class citizens at Sony.
Right. So can you give me an example of some technology or some tweak in the facility that you've added to accommodate these outside projects?
Sure. Well, one with the immersive sound, that was huge, because they're always looking for that. And the fact was, there weren't a lot of immersive stages out there, so it came to a point in the beginning where it was, do you mix it natively? Whoops. Do you mix it natively, or do you mix it, immersive? Right. So everybody was back and forth on that, and if you didn't have enough immersive stages, they were limited, and they had to mix in a 5-1 up mix to an immersive stage. So we continue to expand that in our stages to give more and more options for immersive. And then, of course, the home entertainment room that Bill was very much a part of allowed us then to take it so the feature product that we have, our library product or other studios product, can then be created for home environment in the 12-channel immersive formats.
And well, you're also handling over-the-top type streaming entertainment as well, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Lots of that.
Yeah, that's why we have a strategy that obviously takes advantage of a lot of different outlets for our content, and so there are a lot of over-the-top clients that are looking at wanting to deliver immersive formats for sound. We've got broadcast partners who want to deliver immersive sound formats for their clients as well. So there's a lot of, I think, synergy between what we're doing on the bigger stages, funneling down to the smaller stages, and what's ultimately happening on the home side as well.
Right.
And we're marrying all that with picture and UHD HDR for the home entertainment side, on theatrical content and some of the television, or we'll call it episodic content for the over-the-top partners.
Right.
And so I think that's really sort of the overall driver, is to getting better picture, getting better sound into the theater and into the home, is really what we're trying to support, is getting that ultimate experience wherever the consumer is going to see it.
Well, we're in this time where so much is changing in our industry so quickly. Where do you see sound going?
Wow.
That's a big one, right?
That's a big question. I think because of technology, there's going to continue to be a crossover between the creative process and the whole workflow and how things get started and finished. Technology technology drives the way we work. They're going to drive our workflows, but we want to be a part of it to make sure that it works for us as well. But our filmmakers, as we went before, it's so diversified. It's not like you can just say, well, sound's going to be this in the future or that, because everybody's going to have different type workflows to work in. The one thing about sound is it's a globalized business. Right. So it's not like it's just Hollywood or Canada or New York. It's India, it's Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. You can be a sound artist, and there's creative sound people around the world. And I think there'll be a lot more networking and connectivity in the future between locations to allow a more collaborative global team working on projects.
I love that idea. I mean, how do you have any thoughts of how Sony will actually adapt to that kind of future vision?
Yes.
Anything?
Nothing we can talk about
Nothing
yet,
you
but
can
there
reveal.
are things that we are looking at expanding our footprint for remote collaboration.
And it makes
And-
total sense
yeah.
to do that. But when are you going to be starting to reveal the details of this?
Soon.
It's going to be big.
It's going to be big. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
That is really the driver. I mean, we're really sort of still at the beginning stages of immersive sound. I mean, as much as it's been around for a few years now, and we put our first stage in was 2013,
About that, yeah.
2013. It's only been 4-ish years, and at the same time, that still needs to trickle down into the home, right? There's still, it's not as ubiquitous as I think everyone would ultimately like it to be, but we're getting there. And so I think that we still have some growth in the immersive sound formats before we have to worry about the next, whatever the next is going to be.
I doubt it's stopping here.
No, I doubt it.
Absolutely. Well, we're beginning to run out of time, but I'd like to ask you one last question,
Sure.
which is tell me what's going on with the MPSE.
Oh, I'm president of the Motion Picture Sound Editors, and I was brought into that position 2 years ago. Motion Picture Sound Editors is a global organization. We have membership in Europe, Australia, Canada, China, and I'm really proud about this. It's grown. It's not just an organization that recognizes sound editing as it was. We're more involved in technologies now. We have these events that we started a couple of years ago when I started as president called Sound Device Events. And the Sound Device Events is where we invite companies like Dolby, Atmos, Isotope, Particles, all these companies to come in to a studio location, which is usually like at Warner Brothers or Sony or the Formosa Group, who's very supportive of the MPSE. And the vendor brings in the technology that they're currently working on for release. The membership then hears about it and says, what about this? Could you possibly consider this? This would be really helpful if we had this. And it becomes a collaboration between the technological vendors and the sound community. And then you feel like technology is not going to tell you how to work. You actually participated in it, which for the technological vendors also beneficial because there was artist involvement in the creation, so it's more of a collaboration. And because of the crossover between editing and mixing, we get a lot of involvement with Cinema Audio Society, CAS. So when we have our sound device events, we invite their membership. And other times we'll just screen clips of a film or a film, and then we have a panel discussion with a moderator. It's like this coming up, we got the director from Blade Runner coming with the sound team this coming Friday at Sony. They're going to run the film and they're going to talk about how sound was integrated into the movie. Same thing for Baby Driver, which was a big hit because it's such a unique film, having the sound, the picture, and the music totally in sync.
Yeah.
So the MPSE is trying to create a more collaboration between vendors and artists, and we're also trying to do a strong mentorship for students. We're going to be supporting them at Chapman University this coming March, where they're going to have educators at their conference and students. And MPSE is working with the dean down there in starting conversations about how the MPSE can be involved in that, because we want to nurture students.
Well, it sounds like a perfect connection to have the president of MPSE inside at Sony. You can learn a lot from what the MPSE is doing as you evolve.
Absolutely.
Well, wonderful to talk to both of you.
Well, thank you so
I
much,
look
Deborah.
forward to being on the lot again soon, I hope.
Come visit.
Yes.
Thank you, I will. Enjoy the rest of your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.